Call to order the City Council regular meeting agenda for Monday, June the 23rd, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. If you would all please join by standing. I'm going to lead us in an invocation followed by Councilmember Fernandez and the pledges to our flags. Bow with me. Heavenly Father, we just want to come and stop right now and ask, first and foremost, that you would be a part of our meeting and our gathering tonight. That you could precede us in giving us wisdom, giving us insight, giving us decision-making capabilities as we look at the business of this city, the very important business that not only our staff, but our citizens, as well as our council partake in. So just give us that wisdom, give us your mind, give us your sight tonight. Father, as always, we want to ask that you protect all of our first responders, those in and out of harm's way, but those that are willing and able to respond in emergency situations, that stand in the gap to protect us, and stand there to help get us to help when we need it. And so we want to thank you for them tonight. We ask that you protect them. And Father, we want to come tonight as we've seen our world in turmoil, and we've seen what's happened this weekend, that first and foremost you will protect our men and women in military, both abroad and locally. I pray, Father, that you will continue to bring about the opportunity for peace in the Middle East as we give you praise and honor for the announcement earlier this evening that a ceasefire will be sought between Iran and Iraq and Israel. So we ask, Father, that you bring about peace in the Middle East, that you'll allow cooler heads to prevail, and that you'll allow people to live. Ultimately, Father, that love will prevail in our world, in our country, and right here in our city. We want to give you the praise and glory tonight for all things we ask in your name. Amen.
Y'all will join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
We have one public comment. All right, thank you for that. And as mentioned in the prayer, we did seen word that of a peace agreement or a ceasefire between Israel and Iran will start around midnight. So that's a great thing. Let's just pray that it lasts a long, long while. So with that, we'll move forward in our agenda. Roll call and certification of quorum. Madam Secretary, to certify we have a quorum present as all members are present and accounted for. With that, we'll move to citizens' comments. I believe we have several that have signed up to speak. One for general comments, and then a couple specific to an agenda item. The two that are specific to an agenda item, we will call those up at that time. But with that, Mayor Pro Tem, if you will introduce our first speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Leslie Malone, you would make your way to the podium, state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Great, thanks. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Thanks for this opportunity. My name is Leslie Malone, and I live at 2329 Messina Drive in the Bella Vita neighborhood down on Yost. I have two issues that I wanted to bring to your attention this evening and it's just so cool that you've already recognized the Parks and Recreation, because one of my comments is related to that. And I would like to please request that the Parks and Recreation Department add striping for playing pickleball on the 4 tennis courts at the Independence Park and the 2 remaining tennis courts at Centennial Park. 2 courts there are already striped for pickleball. There are no real pickleball courts in Pearland open to the public except for those 2 tennis courts at Centennial Park. The rec center and the Y are for members only, and they only allow pickleball at certain times of the day, and they play on a wooden gym floor, which is not exactly a real pickleball court. It's an opportunity, but not for those pickleball aficionados, probably not the right answer. As you probably already know, pickleball is the fastest growing sport in the U.S. for the past 4 years. There are not enough pickleball courts in our area to meet the growing demand. It is a great sport for all ages. Also, because I've been to the tennis courts in an attempt to play pickleball, I've noticed that the tennis courts at both of these parks that I've mentioned could use some repair and attention of the nets on those courts. My second issue is the delayed development progress at the corner of Broadway and Yost/Shady Crest. And it is amazing that when I turned onto Broadway this evening, there's actually something happening there. I don't know what it is, but it's been an eyesore for 2.5 years when supposedly construction on a coffee shop began in January of 2023, and it was never completed. A construction fence was installed with green privacy material that's now blowing all over the place, and the location has been an eyesore for this since then. And I hope and pray that it's being remediated. This is on a main area and a big street in the east side of Pearland, and it has been an eyesore for 2.5 years. Thank you so much for your attention and for listening to my comments.
Thank you, Ms. Malone. Vance, could you get with Ms. Malone and just give her the update on the coffee shop? That might help clarify what, where, and how, I'm sure. So, but thank you for those comments. That's all we had in general comments, so we'll move forward. We're going to have the consent agenda. I have items E and F to be removed. Mr. Koza, would you place the consent agenda on the table with the A through F with the exception of E and F?
Yes, Mayor. Consideration and possible action of consent agenda items A through F with the exception of E and F. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Koza?
Aye.
Member Carbone?
Aye.
Member Chavdia?
Aye.
Member Cade?
Aye.
Member Fernandez?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Byram?
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you for that. We'll move to items to be removed from the consent agenda. We'll have items E first. Mr. Koza, would you place E on the table, please?
Yes, Mayor. Consideration and possible action resolution number R2025-98. So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a reimbursement agreement with Pelican Builders associated with a traffic signal that it will be built at the intersection of Business Center Drive and the south driveway into Town Center. Pelican, the developers of the apartments there at the Town Center, is going to be responsible for building the traffic signal and the initial and the upfront cost on that, and then the reimbursement agreement will allow the city to reimburse them for any pro rata shares we collect for that traffic signal from the adjacent developments. There's a couple of hotels adjacent to that, and then across the street at that intersection, a future property when it develops in the future that'll pay their pro rata share of that, and then we will reimburse Pelican for the cost based on those pro rata shares.
All right, I believe Mr. Patel asked for this to be removed, so I'll go to him first.
Thank you, Mayor. Can we go pull up the information on this on the very last page on how they calculated this pro rata? So I was looking at this, and I guess who provided this Exhibit E?
Yes, Councilman. Who provided this exhibit?
Yes.
Oh, this is all based on, we had all these three developers, True Hilton, Town Center Apartment, and Residency Inn. Each of the traffic engineer developed their own criteria and came up with the numbers. So we used the same number and developed this pro rata share, a pro rata percentage impact to the traffic signal based on what they developed. So, and this is all based on there. Only the person that we used develop is Eastern Future Development, that is based on the existing zoning map and using the same philosophy, same concept. What would that Eastern Development would generate the volume of traffic based on that? This percentage pro rata share was developed.
So I guess a couple of questions, if you don't mind, Raj. So you're using 3 different traffic engineers to come up with the trip counts, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
And I'm not really smart, Raj, but let's go through this real quick. 97 rooms with 8,900 square foot of conference space. Is that what I'm reading for the first hotel?
That's correct.
And they're going to say 95 trips is what they're recommending, correct?
Yes, that's AM plus PM site
Okay.
total.
Then you have 337 units. Now, on their website, when I went on Pelican's website, it said 380 units. I don't know which one is correct. But you're telling me 337 units is only going to generate 189 trips?
Yeah, this is not as each single family unit. This is apartment complex. The ratio is it's multiplied by 0.7, so the number will be less than what the number of units in the apartment complex. So that's
I
337.
want to just real quick, Mr. Patel. Also, the trip generation is not total for a day. It's AM and PM peaks, not the whole day. And also back on the 97 room hotel, that's 8,900 square feet, not conference center.
It's supposed to be a conference center.
I,
8,900 square foot, you're not going to build 97 rooms.
I'm just, so I'm just.
Am I mistaken in that?
I will need help. Oh, ELC, do you want to help me? Yeah, please.
But I did want to make the AM and PM site trips. So we're talking about the AM peak, PM peak site or trip numbers, not total 24 hours.
Correct. So the ITE generation manual that the traffic engineers use to produce the numbers, we have AM peak hours and the PM peak hours, which are the worst case. For the hotel, for the True Hilton TIA, the conference room, the manual doesn't provide how much it will generate because it's not a constant thing. It will be just, if you have an event, they don't project that. They don't have those numbers in there. However, it is part of their land use. When they do their description, a hotel may have a conference center as part of the development, and that's how it is calculated based on that.
Okay, so I guess this traffic signal came in. When did this, I guess, come into fruition? When the apartment complex was being built? When do we decide we needed a traffic light there?
Oh, it is like the current concept is the traffic signal is already designed and it's already approved. It's ready to be installed. Pelican is moving forward with installing it. And the way we approve all the construction plan is we will not issue CO until the traffic signal is installed because that is required and that meets warrant right now.
So I guess that traffic signal was not part of the conversation when the Residence Inn got approved.
Yeah, I think that was the time frame because what happened was when we started Residence Inn, that time other developers were not there present, and that time it did not trigger a traffic signal at that time. But when these things happened, Residence Inn came, True Hotel came, and Pelican came. So by the time it triggered traffic signal warrant.
So Raj, my understanding was the True Hotel was already there for a while before the pandemic. I guess the apartment is causing this traffic signal. People have already started building it, and now we're going to hit them with the $68,000 cost. It wasn't their fault. There was no impact needed at that time, right? They're about to open, and now we're going to tell them you got to pay $68,000. The problem was this all came about because of the town center apartments. And really, from my understanding, when town center apartment got approved, they had taken the responsibility to build that. So why are we penalizing everybody else? Now, the other side, the flip side is you don't know what's coming on the east side of that property where he says Eastern Future. And I think you said it's 83,000 square foot, but it's really, I believe from the way, can you show that map real quick? It highlights this. Yeah, right there. On the very far right-hand side, that's almost 20-acre tract. So that could be a lot of different things that could come there. So, I mean, why are we banking on them to say in the future, this is an assumption? But when you go back to your calculations, you guys are really putting a lot of money towards that future development that may not happen. And it's like you guys are passing this cost, Pelican's really passing this cost on to other people. And that's not fair. Is Pelican here today? Mayor, I would propose you pull this until we got further information, please.
I don't have the ability to pull it.
So just maybe to revisit, I believe when this was actually the town center apartments were approved, this was a part of that discussion we knew this would trigger a traffic signal, and there was a desire to go pursue a pro rata agreement at that point. So that's why this has been pursued since that moved forward.
I guess, have these landowners been notified that this is coming?
Western side, yes, because it's in the permitting stage, all the landowners and all these traffic signal and developers are aware of that they are going to contribute towards the traffic signal. Eastern side, since there's no development right now, we don't know when they're going to come. That's why we have to establish this pro rata share. So when they come in play, they will pay the pro rata share. This is not the first time we are using this kind of setup. We used this in the past to develop similar type of pro rata share for other projects. And even like in the business center right there at the Discovery Bay, Discovery Drive, we had a similar situation, and we had pro rata share for that traffic signal too.
So Raj, in the counter argument, wouldn't you say the town center itself should also pro rata pay this fee? Because every time a new store opens, technically they're generating more traffic, right? A store closes, a new one opens. So it could technically be adding more traffic to that traffic signal, correct?
Meaning the existing town center?
Yes.
But they already did their due diligence, and whenever we approve the original plan, they probably contribute towards the signal to another signal towards the roadway and towards the intersection, all those things. So it's not going to change drastic, significant difference between what is current versus what is proposed, because they are not going to change their language and the business so much that is going to generate that much of traffic volume difference.
I guess the question then turns out to be, have you guys given these owners this breakdown of this cost?
Yes.
And you have gotten no feedback?
No, we gave this to all these the developers. They are aware of it, and we have even had a meeting in the City Hall Annex building, and we let them know that this is what is going to be their share. And the way we interpret it is that everybody is agreeing with this kind of arrangement. Okay, so the Eastern Future Development, there are two owners, correct? There are two, and again, the contribution will be based on the site location. If there's a ditch between the north side and south side, if you look at the eastern development, so northern side will have significantly more contribution towards the signal because they will be using that signal more than the southern portion. So again, at the time when we approve the construction plan, they will have to do TIA, and their engineer will come up with the pro rata cost share, what would be their contribution at that time. So again, it will depend on that time and their engineer's evaluation. But ultimately, the total pro rata will be 29%. That's what we are envisioning right now. So just for my curiosity, had this apartment complex not been approved, the residents in would not have triggered a traffic signal, correct?
So no, but what happens with the signal, Councilman, is every single person, every single development around that intersection will contribute to the signal. So once the last TIA goes in, so the traffic impact analysis from the apartments, they had to bring the traffic from the hotels and from the Eastern development, right? If it's future, we don't know. But for the other ones, they know how much traffic. So they have to include that into their study as part of their background traffic. So once all the background traffic and the new traffic from the apartments comes in, then it triggers the signal. So at the end of the day is everybody's gonna benefit from that. And if they don't have a signal, then we're just gonna have really bad traffic too.
Yeah, I guess my heartburn is when Pelican came, they had taken responsibility, right, to develop this and to cover this. That's my understanding. And we may have to go back and look at this video, but I thought that they were taking care of this because this was something they were going to trigger. I did not realize that they were going to prorate it, all this cost, because the development was already under construction. The Residence Inn was. It's about to open, and now they're getting a bill for $68,000, which is a steep cost. But we didn't know what the cost was going to be, and the traffic light was never going to. But once you get a CO, how are they going to come back? How are you going to go back and say, hey, you need to pay on this?
That's why we have that restriction mentioned in whenever we approve the plan. We will not issue CO until they pay the contribution. So it's not CO. We just approve all the construction plan, so then we don't stop the construction of their development.
So you're telling me they knew the cost before they got a CO?
No, we haven't issued the CO yet.
No, before they would have gotten the when they got the permit, they knew the cost?
They didn't know the exact cost, but they know that we were evaluating the cost of the project at that time, and we got some information from them. Do you want to?
Yes, so they knew what the cost was. Well, not the cost, but they knew they had to have a cost share for the intersection, because the improvements, the mitigation improvements that came out of that hotel were gonna impact other areas too. So the signal was the most benefit for them. So they knew that they had to bring some of the costs.
Okay.
And they're just to let you know, their engineer, the traffic engineer, also provided the numbers for that, which it's everybody's contribution.
Okay.
How did, I'm sorry, can I ask something? How did they come up with these percentages? But how? By square feet?
They have different methods, so each traffic engineer will give you their own method of how they want. The approach that they took is based on their site-generated numbers and how much each approach will have that percentage.
There's pretty standard calculations that are used in traffic engineering based upon what the development is and how many trips they'll generate. And then they turn that into the AM and PM peak generations to come up with this pro rata. So like the side that's not developing yet, that's based on what it's zoned and what the expected traffic generation would be per those traffic engineering manuals.
So they're saying that a 97-room hotel will have 95 trips, and a 337 dwelling unit is going to have 189. Is that what that says?
Just during the AM and PM peak hours.
That's all
per day. Not the whole day. That's not a 24-hour count. It's the AM and PM peak combined.
And again, I would go back that each one of these, their own traffic engineers came up with their number.
Right, and this isn't uncommon when we have intersections that need a traffic signal. We've adopted pro rata shares, and then as each development comes in, you don't build the signal until it actually meets the traffic warrants and you trigger needing the signal, but the other developers have contributed to the pro rata, which then gets passed through to whoever builds that signal, or the city keeps it and uses it to build that traffic signal. It's fairly commonly used for intersections in commercial areas.
And we share each developer that traffic study done by the other developer. So it's not like we're hiding all those three traffic engineers independently and giving them the input. We share the information among them so that if there's some difference in opinion, because there's always assumption involved, how many cars will be coming from the east, west, north, south. There's certain assumptions that the engineer can make, and there's certain room, a range between which they can make assumptions. That's why we share the information among all these three traffic engineers who develop traffic impact assessment, and the pro rata share that is presented today is something similar to what they came up with. It's not a significant difference between what was they proposing and what we see here today.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Koza,
Aye.
Member Carbone,
Aye.
Member Chavia,
No.
Member Cade,
No.
Member Fernandez,
Aye.
Member Patel,
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Byram.
Aye.
Motion passes 4-3.
All right, with that, Mr. Koza, would you place F on the table, please?
Certainly, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, resolution number R2025-91. So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Staff report?
Thank you, Mayor. So this is utilizing a cooperative purchasing program to replace our airbags and struts on some of our heavy apparatus for fire. These are not actually part of the apparatus themselves. These are rescue equipment that rides on the apparatus that's used for shoring and stabilization at traffic accidents and other things. So these have to be replaced, I believe, on about a 10-year. They have about a 10-year service life, so these are due to be replaced and are budgeted for this year in the budget to be replaced.
All right, Mr. Koza, did you pull this?
Yes, sir.
All right, let you start off.
Thank you. I don't know if this question is for Trent, Victor, or Chief Taylor, but this is the first time that I've seen on this purchasing layout here where we have two cooperative purchasing agencies broken out for bids, which I kind of like seeing it the way it's laid out. So I just want a little history about why are we seeing two, what's, and I don't know who the right person to answer the question is.
I think as we evaluated with our purchasing division and the finance department, the use of cooperative purchasing arrangements and some of the information we've shared out recently in a memo is that the new protocol we've established with people in the purchasing office is that anytime there's anything that's being purchased or considered to be purchased through a cooperative, we will look at the different cooperatives that are available and look at the different vendors under the different cooperatives that are available, and then compare that pricing to ensure that we're getting the best deal for the city.
Okay,
so that's what you're seeing here.
So moving forward, we'll start to
You'll see this type of information moving forward when we're utilizing cooperative.
Okay, and as far as this type equipment, is it single source, small quantity of sources? As far as, I see the same companies in here. I don't know if it's one you manufacture.
Sure.
Two manufacture.
So I believe we like to have all of our equipment similar, but I'll let Chief Taylor weigh in on that.
Okay.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Epperson. Member Koza, as far as the cooperatives are, so there's different ways for us to look at these when we're going through a cooperative. If we have several vendors, a lot of vendors that sell a certain widget, so to speak, we can go inside the cooperatives and ask for bids within those cooperatives to try to reduce that price. Now, sometimes specific with these particular rescue items are very specific, and the vendor that provides those in Texas is the only vendor allowed to provide these in Texas. So it is a sole source from that perspective. That letter is in here. What that allows us to do, which we've always done in the past, we're just taking the next step of transparency to show it here so that you get a full view of what we've done and what we currently practice in the past, is looking at these two specific cooperatives, HGAC and Buy Board. So we can't take three quotes from different vendors in this case, but we can take the two cooperatives themselves and compare those to see which is the best value for us to get the same product, because we have one sole source. And in this case, we went with the Buy Board in this situation, we went with the HGAC in this situation because it saves us just under $10,000, about $9,700. But the process is what we always follow. It's just taking the next step at Trent's initiative to make sure it's put out there so that it's easily seen and you can see that due diligence is done time in and time out.
All right. Well, I appreciate that detail because, like I said, this is the first time I've seen this, and so I was curious, and hopefully this is what we see moving forward, not just with the fire department, but across the cooperative purchasing group. So, all right. Thank y'all very much. I appreciate that.
Good job. Any other questions, comments?
I wanted to say thank you, Victor. Thank you, Chief, for putting it like this. It was really good to see. Thank you.
Last call for questions. Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Koza,
Aye.
Member Carbone,
Aye.
Member Chavia,
Aye.
Member Cade,
Aye.
Member Fernandez,
Aye.
Member Patel, Mayor Pro Tem Byram.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right. With that, we'll move to public hearing number 1. Who's doing our public hearing tonight? Is that Martin? Nope. Okay. I can't see through over there. There you go. All right. Read into the record the reason for the public hearing and move right into staff report.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. This is a request by VHR Construction LLC applicant and owners for approval of a conditional use permit for dwelling single-family detached use on approximately 0.143 acres of land within the Old Town Mixed Use District, generally located at 2225 North Houston Avenue. As previously stated, this is a conditional use request to allow for a single-family dwelling detached on approximately 0.143 acres in the Old Town Mixed Use District. Public notices were sent to all property owners within 200 feet, and a notification sign was placed on the property, and we received no public comments. To the north, south, east, and west are all zoned Old Town Mixed Use and developed with single-family residences. The comprehensive plan identifies this area as mixed-use center. The mixed-use place type offers the ability to live and work in an interconnected area. The place type does not fully align with the existing character of Houston Avenue, which includes predominantly detached single-family residential homes. While it is not the traditional single-structure live-work unit generally thought of when you hear mixed use, the neighborhood allows for the ability to live and work in an interconnected area due to the proximity of Main Street and Grand Boulevard. With that, staff found that the proposed use partially conformed to this criteria. Shown on the screen is an image of what the property looks like today. And this is the proposed site plan on the right side and the proposed front elevation on the left side of the screen. The proposed CUP for the single-family detached dwelling meets the established criteria approval for a CUP. And as previously stated, the proposed use does not fully align with the designation on the future land use map. The proposed small lot residential use maintains the character of the existing neighborhood, though. Staff recommended approval of the request, and the Planning and Zoning Commission voted 7-0 to recommend approval of the requested CUP. That concludes staff presentation. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you for that. Is the applicant present? See them. All right. With that, we'll move to those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request can go to the podium, give us your name and address for the record, or excuse me, name for the record, and you have 3 minutes to speak. Second attempt, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. Third and final time, those wishing for or against this proposed request. Seeing no one move in that direction, we'll turn it over to council for questions, comments, concerns.
Thank you, Mayor. Vance, just out of curiosity, I know there was a home on this piece of property prior to vacant lot that the picture shows right there. I think it was back during Burrell. We had a tree land in the middle of it and basically make it uninhabitable, if you want to call it that. To me, for the audience that's sitting here, it's a little confusing in the fact that you have a home, you want to come back and put a home back in there. It might not be the exact floor plan, it might not be the same layout, whatever you want to call it. But can you please explain why we have to have a CUP to go back, put a home back into the lot that already had a home on it to begin with?
Yes, sir. So thanks for the question. You're correct. The home was severely damaged from a tree that fell on it during Beryl. And essentially it's just that zoning layer of mixed use and the intent. So the Old Town Mixed Use area has a base zoning of general business. And so the control over new single family development is more about just making sure we're okay with the fit and finish of single family homes in a mixed use area. And in this case, it's very obvious that it most likely should be approved. The existing character, there was a house there before, but it's essentially just rules that have been in place already.
Okay. And that, when you say rules, that's our UDC.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And as far as, to me, personally, if you have a home and you're going back with a similar use, since we're in the middle of our UDC rewrite, is this something we could take a look at? I mean, we're not going from residential to a totally different use from that. Granted, it might not be the same home, might not be the same layout, but to me, I think it's kind of punitive to make a landowner go through this process if they're going back with a similar product. And I mean, I would think through the building permit process, we could say, okay, you know, this isn't right, that isn't right, you know, make whatever adjustments where we don't have to send a landowner back through to get the same product. Now, I understand if they were to switch to a different product or a different use, then that makes sense. But that's just my 2 cents.
Yes, sir. Appreciate that feedback and glad to integrate that into the UDC update.
Thank you.
Mr. Bynum?
Yeah, I'll echo what Member Koza says. This is what, when we talk about the UDC update, giving more freedom for common sense, you know, this is kind of one of those situations, not put you guys through all of this. I did have a question about the summary. We've got this picture here. This is, and it's a vernacular question for me. I call this an attached home, an attached garage home in this picture, right? Which is very similar to the house that's being proposed on here. But our summary, yeah, see, attached garage in the front. Our summary talks about this not being consistent with the area because they're requesting a CUP for a single family detached. Is that just a vernacular difference for us, or is that a...
So the staff report referring to a detached is the products, single family living units are not attached to one another.
To one another.
Left and right.
That's the clarification I was looking for. Okay, great. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? Mr. Carbone?
I'll just echo Koza's comments. Keep it short.
Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close this docketed public hearing and move to new business item number 1. Mr. Carbone, would you place that on the table, please?
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration possible action, Resolution R 2025-CUP 2025-0182. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We've had staff report, those wishing to speak for or against, as well as council input. Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Member Carbone?
Aye.
Member Chavia?
Aye.
Member Cade?
Aye.
Member Fernandez?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Byram?
Aye.
Member Koza?
Aye.
Motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you for that. We'll move to public hearing number 2. Same drill.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a request by John Hanna, applicant, on behalf of Blake C., owner, for approval of a conditional use permit for accessory dwelling unit use within the single-family residential 1 district, approximately located at 2644 Miller Ranch Road. This is a request to allow the renovation and addition of an existing 1,258 square foot accessory structure on the site to be converted to an accessory dwelling unit. The existing accessory building received approval for a 108 square foot porch addition, but staff made a note that a kitchen would not be allowed without first obtaining approval for a CUP. The applicant then made a formal application to request an ADU to be able to include the kitchen in their updated plans. Public notices were sent to property owners within 200 feet, and a notification sign was placed on the property by the applicant, and we received 0 public comments. To the north is the applicant's property, but is a detention pond, and further north is a hickory slough. To the south is a single-family residence. To the east is single-family residence, drainage reserve, and office warehouse. And then to the west is a detention pond also on the applicant's property. The comprehensive plan has this property designated as the natural areas and outdoor tourism place type. The natural areas and outdoor tourism areas are characterized by very large tracts of undeveloped land, primarily utilized for natural preservation and general outdoor tourism. While the existing and proposed use is not fully compatible with the future land use map, the place type does support low-intensity developments that support the character of the primary use. And the proposed ADU is supporting the character of the primary use. Shown on the screen on the left side is a highlight of the existing accessory building, and on the right side of the screen is the existing floor plan, along with the bottom right is the proposed floor plan. And here is an image of the front facade. And staff finds that the proposed CUP for the accessory dwelling unit meets most of the established criteria for approval of a CUP, except for being fully aligned with the future land use map. Staff recommended approval of the requested CUP with one condition, that the CUP shall only allow for the accessory dwelling unit to be occupied by a person who is related to the person who occupies the primary dwelling unit on the subject property. The Planning and Zoning Commission voted 6-1 to recommend approval of the requested CUP with the condition included in staff's recommendation. And should the council desire to add the condition, it must be amended to include it as such. And that concludes staff's report. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you for that. Is Mr. Hannah here? Is the applicant or the owner present? Seeing no one, that's interesting. We'll turn to the public. Those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request can go to the podium, give us your name and address, long habits. Give us your name. You have 3 minutes to speak. Second attempt, those wishing to offer testimony in this public hearing can go to the podium. Third and final time, those wishing to speak for or against this proposed request. Seeing none, we will move to City Council for questions, comments, concerns. Mr. Brown?
Yes, I had one question. My understanding is for this to be an ADU, that it can have mostly a kitchen but cannot have a range in it, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So in our executive summary on our agenda item, it says the existing accessory building received approval for 108 square foot addition or traditional interior remodel, but made note that a kitchen range would not be installed without obtaining approval of a CUP first. So are we being asked to approve a CUP that allows for this to be a full residence or an ADU?
The applicant has requested that this conditional use permit be for an accessory dwelling unit.
So they would not be allowed to have a range to stay within that definition, correct?
Right now, they would not be permitted to include a range in their plans. However, that's why the application was submitted, as they would like a range in their revised plans.
Okay. And under our definitions, if we approve that, that makes it a secondary residence on the property. Is that correct?
Correct. And that's why we added that condition that is typically heard when we receive requests like this, to ensure that family members are staying on the property.
Okay. Second question I had on here, I don't really see on the site plan, well, give me a second, maybe I missed it, how they're going to access the structure, how they propose to access the structure, but I may have missed it. They're not going to drive around the pool, I don't think.
Member Baumer, I would assume they would just use the existing residential parking and then just walk over there. If it's like a driveway concern.
Yeah, I was curious how they were going to get there, but going back to the difference between an ADU and a residential dwelling, if I'm understanding this application correctly, we're basically being asked to allow per our definitions, 2 full residences on a single lot, which we don't allow in our community. Is that correct? Am I understanding what they're asking for correctly?
Yes, you are understanding that correctly.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any other questions, comments?
Thank you, Mayor. So how do we monitor or ensure that it is a family member living or residing on that property? That's my first question. The second question is, when or if it changes ownership, how do we monitor that?
So any complaints that we receive that there may be there may be people that are not family living on the property, we would go out and address accordingly. But that's why we have that condition, to ensure that and to let the applicant know that family is required to live on the property and in the accessory dwelling.
Member
So
Chevrier,
what about change of ownership?
Member Chevrier, if I may, this is Lawrence from Legal over here. The way that the city would traditionally become aware of this are 2 methods. One is if there are complaints from an adjacent property owner saying that this secondary residence, whether it be a change of ownership or anything else, is generating a lot of traffic, and they ask us to investigate because they think that there's a violation of the zoning district regulations. The other way is, more often than not, if a new property owner comes in and they try to lease it out to somebody else, more often than not, they will attempt to get a new meter or meters for it, unless it's all bills paid, which is not that common nowadays. And that would be the first sign, I think, that the city gets saying, hey, if it's not a related person, why is it all bills paid? Or why do you need new meters? So then when we see that, then we will look into it to see who is this other meter in, and then we have the ability to ask before we establish that utility billing account if they're related or not. And if it's from the complaint side, then we also have the ability to knock on the doors and ask the questions, or if we think that there is something that supports the allegation from whoever's making the complaint, initiate whatever appropriate type of investigation or search warrant. I'm going to call it a search warrant, but really it is to go knock on the door or look at records to see who the other residence is it for.
Thank you.
And to answer your second question, the approval of the CUP will stay with the land.
Mr. Koza?
Thank you, Mayor. Lawrence from Legal. I'm going to ask my tried and true question here. We make it through all the processes, everything checks its box. How do we confirm whether somebody's related?
Are you asking me if we're going to do a blood test?
I'm asking you, how do we do it?
So,
so far in these meetings, I have not heard one way that it can be confirmed outside of a DNA test, if you want to call it a blood test, whatever. I have not heard the enforcement mechanism. It's a feel good in the fact that we say you have to be related. The state made an attempt when they tried getting this through the legislature, and they said it can't ever be rented. Right. So my question to the state would be, so somebody pays somebody something, they say, oh, well, they owe me money. I've been involved with one of these, not an ADU, but a short-term rental, and our own investigation came up with the gentleman that owned the property. Everybody was his relative. So outside of, if you want to call it a blood test, a DNA test, whatever you want to say, what is the enforcement of making this requirement if we put it on here? How do we enforce it?
Yes, sir. So if it's related by marriage, then we can ask for whatever documents demonstrate that you are related through marriage, whether that be marriage affidavits or whether that be whatever it is. The probate courts do it all the time, and insurance companies do it all the time. I'm sure we haven't had to experience it yet, so I don't know exactly what other avenues are there, but I think that we should be able to locate those types of things through whatever court records are available, birth certificates, marriage certificates, death certificates, that type of thing.
So is a niece, nephew, aunt, uncle, are they related?
Yes, sir. And if you want to put a limit on it for how far up or down the chain you could be, you can say first or second degree of consanguinity or affinity. And we're happy to do that if that's what city council's preference is.
I mean, my perspective is it gets into the further you get away, the harder it is to say I am related without a blood test, without a DNA test. And in here before, I've asked the question, are we going to do it? And the response was no. So
I don't anticipate us doing any blood tests. That would seem like not the type of government we want to be.
And I agree with you 100%. I'm just, at face value, when we put something like this, I call it a feel good, but with a very weak enforcement.
I think that absent
it's an empty condition.
Well, yeah, it's a feel good.
Absent the blood test, I think that you can have birth certificates that would show if somebody is related by blood in most instances.
When you start getting further away from father, son, daughter,
yes, sir.
Whatever you want to call the.
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
And I mean, like I said, in the one that I was involved with, everybody was related. So that's just my thoughts.
Any other questions, comments? Byram?
Correct me if I'm wrong, I read this packet. They currently have a permit to build this now, right? This conversation is strictly around the range in the kitchen.
That's correct. They received approval for the 108 square foot addition to the building, and they submitted their application to the planning division as they would like to add a range. And as, oh, let's try the share again. There we go. And as you can see on the left side, you can see the building is already there.
And where I would kind of go further, Member Byram, is, you know, this family right here, you know, may be putting, we don't know. If this is mother, father, granddaughter, who knows? We don't know because the gentleman or lady's not here to ask the questions. But if and when this property ever sells, then it gets even more convoluted because then somebody can go, oh, well, I can't really afford this property, but if I rent that out, maybe I could. So it creates other issues down the road. So,
Carbone?
Yeah, I mean, the ADU is a bigger discussion. Looking at this property for this CUP, I'm fine letting them put a range in. And I mean, yeah, we're talking about putting a range in this, and let's punt the ADU conversation for a bigger one. The location of this property, you're not in a subdivision. Your neighbors aren't going to have. I don't know if there's any neighbors that would have issue, and with that condition, there is some enforcement, albeit potentially weak, that we could take. So I don't have an issue with this one.
Okay. Ms. Cade, were you reaching? Okay. All right. Last call, questions, comments? Seeing none, we'll close this public hearing and we'll move to new business item number 2. Before we do, the condition, if council wants to place that condition on, is not in the existing paperwork. We would need to amend a motion to add it. Is that correct?
And that could, if the motion is to approve this with the addition of the staff recommendation, if that's built into the motion and then that's seconded, that's what would be voted on.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would have to be amended after.
Okay.
After the fact.
Ms. Chavaria, would you place it on the table? Up to you if you want to put that language in there or not.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration, possible action, resolution number R 2025-CUP 2025-0159, including the staff recommendation. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We've had questions, comments from council as well as staff input. We are voting to place the condition on the property as talked about in the public hearing. With that, Madam Secretary, we'll call for the vote.
Member Chavarria?
No.
Member Cade?
No.
Member Fernandez?
No.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Byram?
No.
Member Koza?
no.
Member Carbone?
Aye.
The motion fails 2-5.
All right. With that, we'll move to public hearing number 3. Who's staff report giving this public hearing? Okay, we enter it. And we have 2 people to speak on this. We'll do it during the public hearing, but we'll go ahead and get the staff report first.
Thank you, Mayor. This item is for the creation of a public improvement district on approximately 80 acres along Smith Ranch Road, south of Hughes Ranch Road. We received a petition earlier this year from the landowners requesting the city establish this public improvement district to help share in the cost of providing wastewater service to the area. We have with us tonight Mr. Abdi Yassin with MuniCap, who's shepherding us through this process of establishing the public improvement district. And he's got a few slides to go through tonight to go over the purpose of the public hearing. So I'll hand it off to.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Abdi Yassin with MuniCap. I have kind of put together a little bit of a slide showing you all the some of the basics about a PID. I believe you all had some kind of prior, briefing on the project, particularly And these slides that are in front of you right now, I don't know if you're going to be able to see them. Okay. Okay, so the intent of these slides is to kind of give you an idea about the process of creating a public improvement district and then levying an assessment for infrastructure that is meant to be financed through the public improvement district. Public improvement districts are special districts that are authorized under Chapter 370 of the Texas Local Government Code, and in these mechanisms, in Houston area, we're familiar with a lot of these special districts like MUDs and MMDs and things like that. What makes PID slightly different from those other districts are PIDs are not independent districts. These are actually districts that are governed by council. They will continue to be governed by council. But they like the other special districts, they have the ability to finance infrastructure through debt obligations, and those debt obligations can be issuance of special revenue bonds or general obligation bonds or reimbursement agreements for on a pay-as-you-go basis with developers. A PID has two distinct processes in it. The first process is the PID creation process, and then the second one is the assessment levy process. Right now, we're in the first process, which is the creation process. Typically, kind of put a flow chart of how that PID creation process goes through. It starts by analyzing the proposed infrastructure to be financed through the development, and then conducting an initial analysis to establish feasibility of a PID as a mechanism for funding infrastructure, which were all completed. And once that feasibility was established, the next, basically the process started by collecting a petition from the property owners, because PIDs are voluntary designations by council. And once those petitions were, gathered from the property owners, the next step is drafting the development agreement and also a reimbursement agreement that would basically outline what type of infrastructure is going to be financed through the PID and how the cost of those infrastructure is going to be reimbursed over time. Then the true mechanical process, particularly with respect to council, starts by when the petition was submitted to council for consideration, which I believe occurred earlier this year. And council has accepted that the petition from their property owners and set the public hearing to be conducted at today's meeting. And once this public hearing is completed, then the next actions will be approval of the development agreement, the reimbursement agreement, and finally creation of the public improvement district. And that public improvement district will be operational once the public improvement district creation resolution is recorded with the county. So that is the mechanical process of creating a public improvement district, and that's what we're going through. And once the district is created, the next step will be levying an assessment, which is essentially attaching an obligation against the properties within the PID to actually finance the infrastructure. And that's what's going to happen once the creation process is completed. We're hopeful that once the creation is completed, we'll come back to you all again for that second process of levying assessment on the properties. I will start by preparing a service and assessment plan, which will be the governing document for the public improvement district. And I'll kind of go through the basics of that service and assessment plan. And once that the preliminary service and assessment plan is prepared, council will consider basically conducting another public hearing for the levy of assessment. So this public hearing now is for the creation of the district. There will be another public hearing later on for the levy of assessment, because this is a twofold process. The idea is to make sure that all the property owners that are going to be subject to these PID assessments have an opportunity to address their concerns at council level. So this is the first of two public hearings that are conducted, and these public hearings are conducted after publication and mailing of notices to the property owners within the district. So all those legal processes are completed for this first one. The exact same thing will happen for the levy public hearing. And after all that is completed, then council will consider basically levying an assessment and approving a service and assessment plan and assessment ordinance. And once that ordinance is approved by council, then it will be recorded with the county within 7 days. And at that point, the assessment obligation will be attached to the properties within the PID, and each property within the PID will be subject to the payment of assessments for that particular PID. Let me know if I'm kind of rushing through it. I know you've had quite a few things, so I just wanted to, great. So the service and assessment plan is the true governing document for the PID because it's through the service and assessment plan that council communicates its intent of why and how the public improvement district is going to be used. And that service and assessment plan will describe the property that's going to be within the PID. It will describe the proposed land use within the PID, and will also describe the proposed public improvements, which is the main reason why the PID is created. It will identify the types of public infrastructure that is going to be financed through the PID, and also the mechanism through which those public improvements are going to be financed. As the city manager mentioned earlier, this particular PID is being established for the sole purpose of financing wastewater infrastructure that is needed for about approximately 80-acre property. So those improvements will be clearly identified, and the mechanism that's going to be used, which is a reimbursement process, will also be identified. And most importantly, the provisions regarding the assessments, how much assessments are going to be attached to each property, what the assessment collection process is going to be, and then the trigger mechanisms will all be identified in that service and assessment plan. And by approving that service and assessment plan, council will officially levy an assessment against the property. Once that assessment is levied, then comes the administration process. As I mentioned earlier, a PID is not an independent district like a MUD that is governed by a board. It is actually governed by council. So one of the things that we want to make sure is that this PID does not add to the current workload of staff. So the PID's administration will also be handled, basically outside of the staff. But basically, we will right now we are the assessment consultant, will transition into a PID administrator process, and that administrator role will allow staff basically to let the PID be managed without adding additional burden to staff, both from financial and time constraints. A typical PID administration process includes an annual budget process. So every year, the PID administrator will prepare a budget and present it to council. So council will basically get an update of what the project is, and also approve a budget for assessments to be collected for that year. And the PID administrator will also work with the tax assessor collector to make sure that the PID assessments are collected at the same time in the same manner as property taxes for the city. One of the most important roles of the PID administrator is to make sure that everyone that is buying into a property within a PID is informed about the existence of a PID and the existence of an obligation. So the legislatures have made it mandatory now for that disclosure to be provided from September 2021 on. A seller has to provide notice to a buyer both at contract and closing stages. If he or she fails to do that, then the buyer is allowed to walk out of a contract. So it has become a very important process. So the PID administrator is responsible for implementing a disclosure program that will allow buyers to know that there is a PID and there is an assessment obligation for the property that they're buying in. The PID administrator will also help the city to review requisitions to make sure that the PID assessments are used for the set purpose that are identified in the service and assessment plan. There are also a few annual reportings that the legislature have mandated on special districts, so the PID administrator will handle that on behalf of the city and help the city with accounting and auditing assistance. So all these tasks of administering the district will be handled by the third-party administrator, and the cost of that administration is built into the assessment, so the city is not responsible for paying the PID administrator either. So these will be districts that are controlled by council, but will not have any financial implication or impact on the city, both on time and resources. So this is kind of a recap of the area. I believe this was presented to you all, and I think more detailed information is provided to you in the packet. So this is the proposed boundary of the property within the PID. It's approximately 79.7, almost 80 acres of land. And the improvements, the public improvements that are contemplated to be financed through the PID are wastewater improvements and facilities that include lift station, gravity main, force main, and some easement acquisition. The projected cost is about $6,135,450, and the assessments are expected to basically cover that amount. The PID statute allows property owners to pay assessments either in installments, or they can pay it off at any time, or they can pay partially. So it gives them that option. So all those options will be stipulated and identified in the service and assessment plan. One of the conditions that isn't contemplated to be put in there is the PID assessment will be triggered right now for the property owners that are in the district. The PID assessment is contemplated to be triggered when they sell their property to another party. So at the point of sale or development. So it's either transfer of property to another unrelated entity or a development at that point, the PID assessment obligation will be triggered, and whoever buys or develops the property will be responsible for repaying the cost of the infrastructure that is being financed through the PID. So this is a map of where the actual infrastructure, the wastewater infrastructure, is going to be located, in reference to the PID area. And so, like I said, I think in the packet you have a more detailed kind of information which was presented to you all before as well, and I think a lot of it is in there as well. So hopefully you all had a chance to look at it. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer. But I just wanted to give you kind of an idea of a snapshot of what the PID process is and how we're going to go about basically putting this in place. Thank you.
Very good. Very good information. We do have a couple of people who signed up to speak. We will put them into the public portion of the public hearings. So, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, if you would call them up.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Carl Gearing, make your way to the podium. State your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you for being here.
Good evening. Carl Gearing, 2401 Smith Ranch Road. So I have a business there on that address. And as y'all know, this area is underdeveloped. And there's a lot of developers that are looking at this area, want to put in some real quality projects. I mean, tens of millions of dollars. And from what I understand, there's no public funds available for utilities in that property. And that being said, none of us can sell or develop our property. So we really have no choice. We have to support this, and we hope you support it also. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gearing. And Richard Atchison? Did I say that right?
There he is.
You would, sir, state your name for the record. We no longer have to do addresses, so for those of us that are used to saying that, just need your name, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you, sir.
My name's Richard Atchison, and I'm in the same situation. We've had several people look at our property to purchase it, and without any sewer system available, everybody ran. Yeah. And we would just have to find some way of fixing this problem, and this is the most reasonable one we can come up with. I hope it goes forward. Thank you.
All right. With that, anyone else would like to offer testimony for this? Sir, you have just give us your name for the record and 3 minutes to speak. And afterwards, Francis, can we get a sheet to him? That way we can tie everything back to his comments. Thank you.
Okay, my name is Paul Edwards, and I own one of the properties here mentioned. And what I didn't hear was the rate of assessment, shall we say. Neither did I hear if there are cost overruns in this development. Will those be passed on to the property owners? And I heard a term that got my attention, levy. Does that mean property owner's property becomes at risk to be confiscated, shall we say, by the district or by this, by way of city council, shall we say? And if there are cost overruns, does that get passed on to the property owners? Because I remember working with the county, with Harris County, when there's cost overruns with HUD funds, okay, that has to be dealt with through the developers. So this is $6 million. If it turns into $8 million, it appears the investors and developers are passing on these costs and risks to the property owners. Basically, the property owners are standing in the gap, shall we say, for the developers and the investors. So the property owners will be covering or responsible to be liable for the investors and developers' cost of doing business. I mean, somebody tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I heard what I heard. I know there was legalese and a whole lot of other terminology that lay people like myself may typically not be understanding of. But for me, the gist of it is this cost of this development with no benefit to the owners other than the return on their investment, primarily, this cost is being passed on to the property owners. So it appears, and I stand to be corrected if I'm wrong. So there are 2 points. The assessment and levy to be explained more thoroughly. If there's cost overruns, who is liable for that? And this, as values increase, okay, do property owners have a say in terms of how it's assessed and the amounts that it's assessed? Is this up, will this be up for debate? Will this be points of contention that property owners can refute?
So we'll have your questions addressed when we get to the city council portion for questions and comments. We'll have staff address those questions straight on. We're still taking testimony in the public hearing. Second attempt for those wishing to offer testimony in this public hearing can go to the podium and give us your name for the record and 3 minutes to speak. Y'all kind of queue up there. But we do have answers for those, but when we get to the question and answer period, we'll answer them.
Good evening. My name is Nick Modametti. Thank you for your time in advance. I'm here to speak in support of the creation of this public improvement district. To give you a little bit of history, my father and I own about 16 acres in this district. And in 2022, this council approved overwhelmingly a mixed-use project on our site to serve as a catalyst for growth in the area. A few months after getting that approved, we came to learn that our site and all of our neighbor sites lack access to public sanitary sewer. You know, we worked with Matt Buchanan at the PEDC and others, and unfortunately, the lowest cost option we have found is $6.14 million. If there was a better option or a lower cost option, we wouldn't be here tonight, but unfortunately, that is what we are left to deal with. What we believe is the only way to solve this problem is a collective solution, and we believe the PID is an opportunity for that collective solution. What's very nice about the PID is that the city has agreed, from my understanding, for any cost overruns to be borne by the city beyond the $6.1 million, as well as the city is agreeing to carry the costs for our neighbors to allow them to only be able to pay that fee when they go to sell. As I've said, this is not a perfect solution, but tonight we have Rockefeller here as well, who is a developer for our site. And Rockefeller is willing to do this project now. They're willing to build the sewer lines. They're willing to build a portion of Wooten Road. They're willing to bring public water to this area. This is an opportunity that if we miss, the cost for this problem is only going to go up, and there is no other solution than for us to all work together. I strongly encourage the council to approve this district, and I'll turn it over to Rockefeller now to speak as well. Thank you.
Gentleman over here in front of you. Go ahead, sir. Oh, you're a gentleman. Thank you. Give us your name for the record, and if all speakers would get a speaker's card when you're done, that way we can register those comments back for the record.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Tim Wooten with Rockefeller Group. I was here in September when we were doing a revision of the site plan when we started working with the Modamettis on this deal. And while Nick kind of covered basically everything I was going to say, I just wanted to come and introduce myself to let everybody know, just to get a sense of just how we're trying to do our best to make this effort go forward to the benefit of everyone in the community. So as Nick said, we're wanting to try and spearhead a lot of these efforts just managed directly by us in an effort to make sure that the costs that we have are kept within the budget. We want to contribute towards the development of the Wooten Road as it comes along the south side of the property, that ongoing city project. We've also worked with Matt's office now for the past year on the development agreement on how we will get this done, the engineer that we're going to use, what their proposal is going to be, the total budget on it. We've worked, I think, pretty hard, and Matt's office has been very helpful in making sure that we do it the right way, and that's what we're committed to. So I think I would say, really, with that, yeah, we're contributing 1.5 up front to that $6 million budget in an effort to just help make sure that we can get this going smoothly, and we're excited to be a part of this.
Thank you for that. Go ahead, sir. Thank you for being here tonight. Just give us your name for the record, and then we'll let you finish that out when you're done. Yeah.
Yes, my name is Chris Mosley, and I own property in the same area. And just as he stated, I'm also concerned about people being able to afford the additional cost that comes along with this if you cannot sell your property or something doesn't work out for you, because nothing is guaranteed. And your property is only worth what somebody's willing to pay. So I am a little bit concerned about that, but I do understand why it's needed. But at the same time, I don't like the fact that I feel like it's something that the city should be paying for, not the landowners in the area. But that's just my concern. Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that. Last call for those wishing to offer testimony in this docketed public hearing. Seeing no one else go in that direction, before we're going to kick it to council for questions, comments, concerns. Trent, Darren, Matt, who wants to take a stab? I think the questions are valid questions. Let's answer those questions right up front.
I believe Jonathan is going to take those initial questions, and then Abdi is also here as a resource if we need.
Yes, sir. So I am Jonathan Pollard, Development Manager with the PEDC. A couple of things to note. So Paul, you had asked about cost overruns. Generally speaking, the rough assessment, and this is based off of the total acreage divided by that, or 6.1 million divided by the total acreage that's within the PID boundary. It's roughly going to be $77,000 per acre. And as Nick mentioned, as Rockefeller mentioned, Rockefeller will be contributing $1.5 million towards the overall cost of the project. City will then cover the rest through a reimbursement agreement with the Pearland Economic Development Corporation. So essentially, any cost overruns will be bore by the PEDC. At this upcoming council meeting on June 14th, we'll be bringing a development agreement and a reimbursement agreement to council for their consideration. Let's see here. Yeah. Sure. So generally speaking, the total cost of the improvements right now are estimated to be 6.1 million with some change, 6.135 240 dollars. And so essentially that will cover the cost of the lift station, the gravity lines to feed every single property that is within the boundary of the district, and then, like I said, that lift station and force main to connect back to existing city infrastructure over on Kirby Drive.
Jonathan, let's make sure all the questions come this direction.
Yes, sir.
Back, just to make sure that we stay within Robert's rules.
Yes, sir.
So we had the levy, the cost overruns. How does the levy work? And to Chris's point, what if you're just unable to sell your property or move, or what if you don't want to?
Sure. So I'll answer that last question first. So if you're not able to sell your property or don't want to, then essentially the levy stays on the property. There's no action taken unless you sell or develop your property. And meaningful development in this case would mean, trying to build a gas station, trying to do, something other than maybe say a pool, something like that. If you already own a home out there and you want to put in a pool or a shed or an ADU, that's not typically viewed as major development that would cause the assessment to be triggered. And then as far as the actual levy portion goes, Abdi, would you help me kind of explain what that would entail?
So the actual levy process basically is where everything is put on the document. And one of the things I wanted to mention is once an assessment is levied on a property, it cannot be increased. So the cost estimate that we're working with right now, $6,135,000 is the final cost estimate. And in the development agreement that's going to come before you, cost overruns will be addressed. So that provision about the property owners not being responsible for any cost overrun is included in that development agreement that's going to come for council consideration at the next meeting. So the property owner's obligation will be exactly what was stipulated in this, what will be stipulated in the service and assessment plan, and that amount cannot be exceeded. It will be set at that. The levy process itself, basically, as I mentioned earlier, is a draft service and assessment plan will be prepared, and in that document will actually be available for public viewing before the second public hearing that's going to be conducted. So property owners will have an opportunity to review that document, and in that service and assessment, as I mentioned earlier, the infrastructure that's going to be built, the cost estimate, the related opinion of probable cost from the engineers, the assessment methodology as to how each property, each acre is going to be assessed, what the assessment per acre is going to be, and if a property owner chooses to pay off in an installment, what the installment is going to be. All that information will be included in that service and assessment plan, and that document will be available for public inspection prior to the next public hearing. And then council will hold the second public hearing for the assessment levy. It's only after that public hearing that council will consider basically approving the service and assessment plan and levying an assessment against the property.
And that assessment can wait until somebody liquidates a piece of property and pay for it at that time.
Yes, sir. So there will be a
as opposed to
trigger
installments or anything like this.
Yes, so there will be a trigger language in there that states the assessment collection will not be triggered unless the property is sold to an unrelated party or a development basically is developed. So those languages will be in the service and assessment plan as well.
Throw it back to staff to follow up on that to make sure that we answered all those questions. I think we got them all. The rate, the levy, and cost overruns were the main ones that I heard. So, Mr. Patel?
Thank you so much. Is there a language of interest rate that will be accruing on this?
Yes, sir. That will also be included in there. The interest will be based on a bond buyer index, and then the amount will be stipulated in the service and assessment plan at the time of levy.
So these small, I can see both sides, right? I understand why you want to do this, but I also see individuals that are small landowners, and I believe somebody said $77,000 an acre assessment, correct? So these landowners, I wonder if they don't mind sharing. How much is your land? How many acres? 2 acres. So they're going to be assessed $150,000. You're going to accrue interest on it. I wonder what their land is worth now. So if their land is worth $200,000, we're just going to assess $150,000, $350,000. Does it even make sense? I mean, I'm just curious. How does it make sense? It doesn't make sense in my head. With interest rate, if they hold on to it, in 10 years, let's say somehow it changes, the cost is just going to be higher than what they owe. Like it just, I don't feel good about that, right? Like you understand, I don't mind. I understand what they're trying to do. I want their project to move forward, but at the same time, I also see these guys. How long have you had that land out there, if you don't mind me asking? You see my point? It's eventually we're pushing them out, and that's not fair.
I think, so as far as the interest is concerned, interest only accrues if a property owner chooses to pay their assessment in installments. And that will not be triggered until that trigger event occurs, which is basically either the sale of the land to a third party or development of the land. It's only at that point that the assessment is triggered. At that point, they have the option to pay it off in full, to pay it in part, or to pay it in installments. If they choose to pay it in installments, the installment will be for the future year. So it's not going to have an accrued interest until they sell. It's from the point of trigger, from the point the assessment is triggered onwards, if they choose to pay installments, then interest will be applied.
So if they sell it in 20 years, then the interest will start in 20 years.
Yes, sir. From that point of sale, the trigger point is when the interest starts.
Okay. So what is their current land value today without this assessment? I'm just curious. What is their land value today? Do you guys know these owners that are here? Do you know? I'm sorry, I hate to put you. Do you know what your land value is today? No. Does yes, sir.
Yes.
Sure. What is that? Okay.
We really need to go to the podium.
Okay. Sorry. Could you go to the podium?
Yeah, just so we can get it on.
I apologize. Sorry.
No, you're doing fine. We appreciate your feedback.
Again, I'm hearing the language. Someone mentioned language. And I hope everyone sees how shrewd this language actually is and how skewed it is in favor of the developers and the investors, and how landowners are being, basically, we're being hijacked here.
Sir,
we're being hijacked.
Sir, hang on just a second.
I'm sorry.
This is a proceeding that you've already had an opportunity to speak for 3 minutes. I'm not going to give you another 3 minutes to use that type of rhetoric. He's asked you a specific question. I asked you to come to the podium so we could get it on the record. And I'm asking you to answer the question. Nobody's trying to hijack anyone. And I take offense to that, just like you take offense to this whole proceeding. And we're not gonna sit here and go through that, okay? He's asked for a question, and you've had an answer for the value of your property. That's all we're asking for.
Okay, sure. I've been offered, will that give a
Sure, yes.
general idea? I've been offered $100,000 for that acre. I was offered.
For that 1 acre?
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. I appreciate it. So we're gonna put $150,000, or I guess 1 acre, 77,000, so it's $177,000, I guess?
Yes, sir. That is the cost of the infrastructure to put the wastewater for that property. It is just the cost of the infrastructure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough sell, right? Like, you understand his point of view. Like, I got to listen to his point of view that he's been there since '81. You guys want to develop this. You're going to pass on a $77,000 cost on an acre lot. Maybe he gets 200, I don't know, but somebody's going to cut back that 77,000 out of it, right? And he's not in the market to sell. So I get you're saying, like, hey, you don't have to pay anything until 20 years when he sells it. He doesn't have to worry about it. But the day he does, it triggers it. So, I mean, I don't know what the solution is, but I think I don't feel good about it. I really don't. I mean, I don't know if there's any way you guys, how many owners are there? There's small owners that don't want to do this. Have you guys gone to these small owners to figure out how many there are and how much cost they're going to burden on this?
Mr. Patel, just to be clear here, Abdi is our consultant. He's
Okay,
not
so
the
have you guys
developer.
gone out there and?
We sent notices to all the owners. This is an owner petition, not a city-driven process.
Well,
So
man,
the
not all
went
owners
out-
agreed to it, right? Not all owners.
Well, they by law had to get petitions signed, and the owners went out and got petitions signed in the district for 60%. So that's how the process works. So tonight is a public hearing, but it's not the city's job to go out and solicit these petitions. It's the landowners in the area. If they want these improvements and they want the city to figure out a way to do them, the onus is on them to go out and solicit petitions, and that's what the Matamidis did. And that's their right to go out and solicit petitions.
And under
But
this-
Abdi's not the developer.
And under this process, it requires 50% of the owners to make that petition, and there were 60% in this process. And then I would also, point out that, when we're talking about land values, part of this process is to install the infrastructure that area is lacking, which will obviously drive up the value of that land in the future from a commercial value standpoint.
2 acres in the 288 corridor with frontage with water and sewer that Mr. Mosley offers is only assessed right now. This does not have utilities, and now it's getting a 4-lane road putting in front of it. His market value right now is only $153,000. Well, it's going to be worth a lot more than $153,000 when he gets water and sewer there. There's no land you'll find in the 288 corridor that you can buy for $2.50.
And Matt, I believe also the longer they hold on to their property while, for instance, the Rockefeller development takes place, that will also start to increase values in the area as well.
Sure. All the infrastructure and utilities, the reason it's only assessed right now at $153,000 is because there is no utilities or infrastructure.
Sorry, Matt, since you have it up.
Like Mr. Atkinson said, the reason he can't sell his property for the price he wants is because he doesn't have
I see
utilities.
both sides, but I guess the question then I have is, these properties, the owners are here today, any of them residential, or are they just land being held? So there are some residential, they're actually staying on that properties out there?
There are two single-family homes. There's two, Mr. Atkinson, and I believe that must, yeah.
Sorry, you got to go on the podium. I apologize.
Just have to be able to get it for the record. And I do apologize if we keep getting you up and down. We're just trying to get it so it's caught in the record.
I'm Richard Atchison again. All improvements that the city does, like putting in roads, doubles or more the property value. Sewer is one of those things also. The amount that's spent, you will get twice or three times that in increased value when you sell. And if the interest only accrues when you sell, it's a win-win for everybody. That's just math. When you bid Hughes Ranch Road, my property increased. When you bought the land, you paid very little.
Yeah.
After the road was there, when you bought Smith Ranch Road,
Mr. Patel, real quick.
property value went sky high.
Real quick, Mr. Atchison, what specific question did you ask?
No, I just wanted to know, how many of landowners actually live in that area? And it's only two of you guys that live in that area. Otherwise, it's just an investment property.
Yeah, I think there's only two of us.
Okay.
Maybe three with that lake.
Okay.
And the Garions obviously have an ongoing business at the location too.
Right.
Okay.
And the guy on the lake in the back is not in the district? Correct. Yeah, not in the district.
Okay.
Any other questions, comments from council?
Thank you.
Mr. Koza?
Thank you, Mayor. So just for my curiosity, as far as the boundaries of the PID, how was that created? How did we come up with that?
Yes, sir. So per state law, essentially, any improvements that a PID funds must serve each property within the district. If we can pull up the map, it was thought of at the time that the 10-acre property with the lake on it, Dr. Maya's property over here, that it would adversely impact that property as it currently stands. I mean, roughly 60% of it is a lake, which makes it realistically hard to develop. So providing sewer to that would have charged, a $770,000 assessment on 10 acres with only 4 of it realistically being developable. And then as for the smaller 4-acre portion, just to the south, so that portion as well, for that larger 10-acre piece at the very bottom, it's going to be serviced off of Hughes Ranch Road. And then that 4-acre piece, rather than doing another trunk line south for that sewer main from Dr. Maya's current property that is within the boundary, it was decided to leave that piece out as well.
And when you say decided to leave that 4-piece acre, what was the criteria to leave it out? I didn't.
Member Koza, if it doesn't touch a public right of way that the sewer can touch it, it can't be assessed.
Okay.
So you got to look at this on a per parcel basis, maybe not necessarily an ownership basis. And then obviously all of the property to the east has sewer, all the property to the north has sewer, and the property on the west side of Smith Ranch Road also has sewer.
Okay, so does, like up here on this right here where there's
The residential one has septic tanks, so that's why we didn't. They're all on septics, so we did not include that.
I'm just curious. That's what I.
Yeah.
And as far as when you get into the landowners that have the smaller pieces within here, they don't have an ability to opt out or opt in. Either way, the boundaries are drawn. How did that come about? Just out of
Just a discussion of how we could spread the cost out to serve more properties. Because if you left out, say we left out the Chan property at the end, then the Chans wouldn't pay, and then they would come in and be able to extend it 2 feet.
Right. No.
And then that really wouldn't be fair to all the other owners that they paid. So the more property you can spread out the cost of, is the benefit to all the property.
Which I understand that.
It's more fair.
I'm just trying to understand what the process is.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Carbone?
Thank you, Mayor. I mean, really, well, from an economic standpoint, it's the 77K per acre, and do we think that's going to increase the value? I mean, if I'm sitting in the audience and I own property that's not being developed right now, is the access to sewer going to add more than 77K? I mean, that's the economic decision, and with it spurring off additional development, will that the surrounding development with the sewer add more than 77K per acre in value? And do we have any, how can we give, I think that's the case. Besides my feeling, what data can we point to say, we think it's going to be a 150K per acre bump, or we think it's going to be 50? What data can we look at for that?
Yeah, it will most likely highly increase the property value. So currently, as it stands, per square foot? What did you say earlier, Matt?
I suppose the best thing we could do out and get an appraisal. I think when we did the Business Center Drive, which is another great example, which was a road assessment, there is a process there.
Yeah, it's just a different process than what we're doing here. That was a process done through the transportation code, but it's a very similar process. And the property owners were assessed for the road improvements that the EDC initially paid for. And then as those properties have now sold, we saw properties that were originally valued at, for instance, the assessments, for instance, went from, property may have been assessed $300,000, but now they're selling their properties for over $1 million because it has a road and it has water and sewer. So that's probably an extreme example, but just because you can't compare Business Center Drive to what's happening over here. But as you can see today, the development has taken off.
I agree. Do we have any data?
I mean, we could have an appraiser go out and do an analysis. I mean, we wouldn't have to do full-blown appraisals, but
Yeah, I'm not saying spend tons of money. Just give us something to point to say, yeah, besides.
I think, and we could go back and look at the Business Center Drive. I mean, property on Business Center Drive, I think selling north of $15, $18 a foot. So,
Right.
And this street would be analogous to Business Center Drive, obviously. So, I would expect that the values on the street would go up tremendously. Now, some of these parcels are so small that they're going to have to combine, and you might take a little discount, obviously, because your property in and of itself isn't big enough to develop. But most of these are.
Yeah, and I believe so. I just give us some data. We don't have to go hire appraisers and everything, but just give us something to say, yeah, that's right, or wow, you're crazy and this doesn't make sense. I think the numbers will support your case, but I think that's what it boils down to. And that's only when you decide to sell. If not, there's no interest carry. You can hold it for the rest of your life, and your heirs can pay $77K per acre 50 years from now. And I mean, it's not going to change anybody's cost of living out there today because of the 77K levy, right? If it helps, one of the 4 accepted methodologies of appraisal is cost basis. Essentially, if one can establish a cost of adding infrastructure to a property, the property appraisal can take 100% of that as part of the cost of the appraisal. So one of the 4 approved methodologies for appraisal is a cost basis. Yeah, I appreciate that, but that doesn't mean somebody's going to walk out and stroke them a check for $77K an acre more just because we spend it. Respectfully, give us some estimates. Show us what we've seen in Pearland or around the Houston area suburbs. And again, I think you get there, but just because it costs $77K doesn't mean that everybody's property is going up by $77K.
Good question.
Any other questions, comments? Mr. Byram?
I'd also like to look at, if we're going to look at kind of what the values are, that's very melodic. If we're going to look at the values, because I see where you're going, Member Carbone, is it's a matter of this is going to improve the values, but I see from the property owner's perspectives, I don't want to suddenly have this big bill I've got to pay, right? Or somebody can come in and take my property if I don't pay it. And I think we've heard, and hopefully you guys have heard, that that's not the scenario. This isn't something where the PID or the city or anybody is going to come in and say, write a check tomorrow, and if you don't, we're gonna take your property. That's not the way this is being structured. I would be curious on the property tax valuation side of it, how this applies, because there is the 20% cap circuit breaker rule on property tax valuation that for the property owners out there, the current Texas property code won't let the appraisal district raise your value more than 20% year over year, as long as you don't modify the property or it doesn't change hands to another owner. So I'm curious.
Investment property.
And this would be just an assessment,
Correct.
so it's not going to affect their levy.
He's talking about
I'm talking about the
appraisal districts.
improvements.
Yeah,
That once we do the improvements, the
Sure.
road gets done, water and sewer gets brought in. What does that do?
If they're a homestead, so that would only affect 2 properties here.
That's the homestead rule, the 10%. I'm talking about the other properties out there that are the investment properties that the circuit breaker caps at 20%.
Sure.
But would these improvements open that door up for the appraisal district to be able to say, well, it was at 42, now it's at 300? That would be a question I would want to know.
And the other thing is, I just remind you, when we sat down and started this, we talked about alternatives. And the first alternative is for the city to pay for this and put it onto the ratepayers. And I think we could do a poll, and the answer to that's no. So then, the options were what special financing would afford these people the opportunities to do this. And there's a management district that doesn't have bonding capacity. They could create a MUD, but I think it'd be challenging for this small of an area to create a MUD. So then the last alternative was this PID. So the city paying for all this is not an option. So then it's all these special financing tools, and this is the one that we found to be the most attainable to get this area sewer.
Yeah, I agree. I believe the PID is the right way to go. As Member Carbone said, I think it's the right thing to do. It sounds to me like there's maybe some more information we could provide the property owners where they could be a little more comfortable with it. Those that don't understand the ins and outs of this on a regular basis. That's all I'm getting at, is painting the whole picture. Right.
Yeah, and I think the picture that we need to see is, what's happening around this area, what's happening with Smith Ranch Road going under redevelopment, what's happening with the available water and sewer, what happens to a piece of property in that particular area when that happens. We've had plenty of opportunity around here to see where roadways have gone in or roadways have gone from 2-lane, really, old time, county roads to a 4-lane boulevard, and seen what properties have done. I mean, right now you can look at McCard Road and you see what properties are being listed for, being contracted for, versus where they were, 2 or 3 years ago, before that road, started. Same thing, county road, now it's got water and sewer to it, and those types of things. So there's probably, to Member Carbone's question, there's probably in Pearland some comparable looks at what that is, without having to go too far or even make some kind of mental gymnastic to make it happen. I mean, we've seen it and those types of things. And so, like others, I think ultimately having this in will raise the value, and you should get that value back to you, not give it up. Because without the improvements, you're not going to get that increased value. So, is there a guarantee? There's not. I think somebody asked, there's no guarantee, or said it. There is no guarantee. But at the same time, there's no force to do anything tomorrow. So I think that takes that pressure off as well. Mr. Patel?
Thank you, Mayor. One last thing, Matt, maybe. Can you go back to that map where it shows all the property owners? please. So on the internal properties, it looks like a lot of the properties is owned by a lot of the same property limited companies. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's
The Matamides, who are here to my left, they
Okay.
own that entire block. So all the Alamus properties, and I don't have the map, I can't see that far, but they own all those.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, some of these properties are smaller, independently owned. If they were to sell that property to their neighbor, would that trigger this as well, or could we do it at development only? Is there a way we can say, hey, if they merge, because a lot of these tracts are small. I'm talking about the individual owners that we have today. If they hold on for it, whatever years, and they just sell it, or they merge with another landowner, is that going to trigger it, or is that going to be only a development?
We had it being triggered when they sell.
There's no way to trigger it at development?
I mean, it's something we could probably talk about.
Because I think it would be a big difference, right? Somebody selling it for the same rural land, knowing that, hey, that there is a penalty coming. But if I'm a developer, it's a lot easier to carry forward and build it into my cost model. So I don't know how the rest of the council feels about that, to say, hey, if there is an opportunity, if they're just trading hands on a property, it shouldn't trigger that, assessment until actually development of that property.
Abdi, is there a possibility of doing it that way, where it's assessed at development, not at the sale of the property?
Yeah, so the trigger, it ultimately will be up to council. So the trigger
Okay.
language that is going to be development. Have to evaluate.
Do the landowners kind of understand, like, look, you can hold on to your land as long as you want. You can even sell your land as long as, and you may not get the price, because the buyer is going to have to end up paying for it when they pull and say, we're going to develop this, right? So that's, really, this is going to happen.
I think that'll be the challenge, is that, most people, if I'm going to buy property from you, I'm going to want you to settle up on the assessments you owe and not the future person. So that's usually why they get settled, because the title company calls and says, there's an assessment on this property. And you're not going to find a lot of buyers that are going to say, yeah, keep the assessment on. I'll I think most of the assessments are going to need to be settled.
But I guess the assessment is coming from us, and we can kind of say, hey, until the permit is being pulled, we won't have.
But if you're buying the property, are you going to want if you're buying the property, you're going to want the assessment. The buyer always wants the assessment settled.
But it's going to be adjusted on pricing, knowing that, hey, I have to be responsible for it, right?
Maybe.
I know if I'm buying it, I'm going to say, okay, there's an assessment coming. I'm going to adjust the price. I'll handle it. Again, it's just an option.
Any other questions, comments? All good comments. All right, we're going to close this docketed public hearing, move on to new business. We will, Darren, Trent, someone, when's the next time we'll be?
So, Mayor, I think this is our public hearing on this. So we'll come back in July, and that's when council will consider creating the PID and the development agreement with the developer. That's just the next step. There's still multiple steps after that to go through, developing the preliminary service and assessment plan, the cost determination, and the final service and assessment plan, and then going through another public hearing before we go through the assessment ordinance.
Okay, so more to come in July. All right, stay tuned. With that, we'll move to new business continued. Mr. Byram, if you'll place item number 3 on the table.
You're fine. Consideration and possible action, resolution number R2025-95. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Quick staff report, and I know we've got a report, council.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Mayor, council members. It's actually as an honor and a privilege tonight to be able to discuss this item, because our Charter Review Commission, if you recall, which y'all appointed in January this year, concluded their work in May, and they worked diligently with Katie Leninger in our office, and it was a very productive sessions, and I know that Craig Slater, their chair, is here this evening. I just want to let council know that the purpose of this meeting tonight is to meet a charter requirement, and that's to accept the report of the Charter Commission into the official record of the city. Just want to let you know, moving forward beyond this meeting, the council will actually have an opportunity later this fall probably in early November, to take the recommendations of the Charter Review Commission, discuss those after a public hearing. We'll have a public hearing, then go into a discussion time when the council can actually decide which, if any, of the proposed amendments that you would like to send to the voters. Also at that time, if there's other amendments that the council sees fit to recommend at that time that go to the voters, you could do that as well. So, and then that election would be in May 2026. So just wanted to sort of give you the picture moving forward. Craig, I know you're going to have the floor here, and I was going to introduce the Charter Review Commission members, but I'm assuming you're going to do that as part of your report. So
Yes, sir.
Take it away, Craig.
Well, thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure. And yes, we would like to acknowledge those that gave up their time and their talents to come out and support our charter review. And first off, we've got Miss Victoria Frosberg. Raise your hand. They assured me they were not going to come up and stand with me. She's from our newly annexed Audubon Place. That's right. We've got Shelley Hauser is right here with us. She's on the education forum. You'll notice that a lot of these people, or a lot of these volunteers, actually donate to other opportunities within this city. We got Mr. Jim Johnson. All right, he's from our chamber president and our newly elected school board, right? Mr. Koza, Jerry couldn't make it tonight. He said 2 Kozas was too many, so he kind of excused himself. We got Dr. Awana. He was our best dressed member of our Charter Review Commission. He's with San Jac College. Always. Travis Spiegelhauer, raise your hand, Travis. He's from our west side, and he was our best PowerPoint presenter. He brought us with a lot of information, and was a wealth of information and did a lot of the research. And we would be remiss if we didn't highlight the contributions of Katie, Mrs. Liniger, and Lawrence himself. I mean, they did a great job in helping guide us and secured us with all the information that we need to make an informed decision. So, moving right along, I think we all agreed that if it wasn't broke, don't fix it. It's really hard when you recognize that U.S. News and World Reports ranked us as the #1 city in Texas and #3 in the nation. To make that list, you have to have a place to live that has good value, a desirable place to live, have a strong job market, and a high quality of life. Y'all are meeting all those requirements. I mean, gosh, the only challenge that I saw in that report was that if you're looking for love, this is the wrong place, because 58.5% of our members of the community were married, and hopefully that's to each other. So, in addition, that Trailblazer Award that just came out in end of April, I mean, for your fiscal responsibility, I mean, that's a testimonial to your that y'all are doing the right thing. So, again, but we did have a couple of recommendations, 3 specifically. Our first was to update the wording in the charter where reference is made to the required publications in the city newspaper. Y'all realize we have a official city newspaper? Y'all verify that each year. Well, we recommended that sections of the charter where reference to required publications in the city newspaper be changed to reflect in accordance with state law. This would allow the council the flexibility in the future should the state law be updated to avoid the ongoing expense of placing notices in the paper. There's 12 sections in the charter that reference that. And I like to pause and say that if you'll recall at the last charter, we reworded or recommended similar language that actually was made, and that was in reference to the budget and with the annexation project, or annexation process. Instead of regurgitating and clearly defining all the goals and objectives or the requirements necessary, we recommended that we just clarify it in accordance with state law. Our legislators meets every 2 years. We only meet every 6. So in keeping, it allowed us our charter to remain in compliance because we changed that. As y'all are aware, they changed the annexation rules. You have to require 75% to annex now. So instead of regurgitating or being out of compliance, we now do it in accordance with state laws, and y'all just have to modify how y'all go moving forward. And, you know, they say the most important part of a rain dance, it's timing. So Katie just provided us with some information today that SB 1062 passed in the House, and it actually modifies the reporting requirements. That just seems like an expense, a tremendous expense related to having to make these publications in an antiquated way. And I'll pull that up, if I may. Let's see if I can find it real quick. Senate Bill 2, yes, 60. The governor signed it. The bill modernizes how public notices can be disseminated in Texas, acknowledging changing media landscape and potentially improving accessibility of information through online platforms while ensuring that the digital outlets meet specific standards. So again, nothing would change until y'all make those recommendations, and this would just purely give y'all the option, should you so choose, to modify and cut that expense down. And that was our goal. Next one has been an interesting point of contention from some of y'all that I may have visited with, and that is we would like to recommend that that the charter be updated to reflect the compensation of council members and the mayor be adjusted annually based on the federal cost of living allowance, which in 2025 was 2.5%. The last time the mayor and the council compensation was adjusted was over 20 years ago. Pearland's population has tripled since then, and our budget has increased. I know y'all are aware the 2024-25 budget's $123 million. You know, we've heard comments about the significant amount of time that y'all spend in preparation for those of you who do prepare. And I know y'all all do. I'm just saying. No, I mean, there was even some discussion about getting y'all assistants or a secretary. That wouldn't work. Mr. Coker himself came and explained to us, having been prior service, the chain of command, and the workaround for that was y'all's Friday pre-briefing, where you can go over the agenda and get questions answered in advance of. But this is acknowledgement for us that we recognize the time that y'all spend and the energy that y'all expend, especially for those that are all business owners, away from your offices and your business. So for that, we would like to see, I mean, at the end of the day, that y'all be adequately compensated. I've always questioned the financial savvy of anybody that spends as much as y'all do to get elected to a $9,000 a year job, but I know it's not about the money, and we just want to say thank you for the gifts and talents that y'all share, especially as business owner. I know Mayor Cole has alerted us that he donates all of his to the Northern Missouri Education Alliance and the Forever Parks Foundation. So I know it's not about the money, but at the end of the day, we as citizens would like to acknowledge that y'all's time and talents are useful, and there's value there, and there's money that we would like to see that y'all get. So the last thing, let's see, there was a discussion. We'd like to recommend, this one's actually, the charter states that a vote upon passage of all ordinances procedures shall be taken by record vote and so entered into the minutes. We would like to recommend an update to the rules and procedures to accommodate simultaneous electronic voting upon the call for a vote. In addition to efficiency, fairness, better public experience, and perception, it will eliminate group vote or the theatrical vote. An electronic voting system represents a significant step forward in modernizing and improving our local government decision-making. And as highlighted by a charter committee member, Jim Johnson of Alvin, it said, if Alvin can do it, we should be able to do it too. So we're keeping up with Alvin. And those were our three recommendations at the end of the day. So, but I would, if I may, like to highlight some of the key discussions that we have just to make sure that you understand that consideration was given to significant items. You know, member districts and term limits came up again, and in looking at historical records, they were actually reviewed and discussed at the last charter review committee and the committees before that. I would just like to say that we, as a committee, felt like that we like the fact that every council member represents every citizen in the city of Pearland. We're not Houston. We use a council manager form of government, as y'all are aware. And we don't have member districts because y'all represent every one of them, but we also are a melting pot. Our communities, we're all interconnected. I mean, there's no special interest group that doesn't feel like, so we got into a lot of discussion about that. We also asked Mrs. Liniger to seek input from city staff on suggestions or recommendations that may be appropriate to include, remove, or update in the charter. We got one from the fire chief, and we got one from our utility director, and that was in section 4. But we didn't really feel it under the administrative services. You know, y'all are responsible for hiring 3 people. Y'all know that, the city manager, the city attorney, and the municipal judge. Everything else is flexible as far as you set up your departments and everything else. We didn't want to tie you into how you structure all of that or keep you tied to a charter. So I apologize, Chief, we didn't add EMS under your protocols, but they're there anyway, and the city manager assures you they're not going anywhere. We actually discussed about our ability to actually pull all of those items out and just list the 3 items y'all are responsible for, and then how they define their departments is up to them. But we pretty much agreed that we could never put that on the ballot, that we wanted to get rid of the fire department and stuff out of the charter. That would probably get lost in that conversation. And finally, we got input from a public comment, and Mr. Hamrock, I don't see him here today, about infrastructure design and improvements. I think his question was specifically related to accessibility and inclusion. We all agreed that accessibility benefits everyone, but that wasn't something that needed to be addressed through the charter. We felt more comfortable referring him over to planning and zoning, and he was good with that. So again, we reviewed all 10 sections, and gosh, y'all are doing such a great job. It's hard, but you couldn't do it without the staff, and that's where I want to compliment your team that you have over here and for all y'all do. It's a pleasure living in Pearland. I can't imagine living anywhere else. I don't have to answer questions, do I?
Maybe.
Okay.
Craig,
It's hard
thank
to
you.
stand still up here.
I'm going to start off, but first off, thank you to all of you for the time and effort that you took to carefully go through the charter, look at the different sections, look at the wording, look at the importance of it, look how our local government functions and works and comes together. I mean, it is the governing document that brings us all together. And at the end of the day, we do have, other documents that are policies and procedures and those types of things that are not in there, right? And so I think it's real important that we look at all of those kind of things. And I think the recommendations, it'll be interesting to see I think tonight all we're doing is accepting the report, and sometime after, sometime after summertime is over with, we'll gear up, have a public hearing, and decide does anything, nothing, what else, what all goes to a vote, in May of next year. So I want to thank y'all, personally for the time and effort that you put together collectively, as well as individually, reading this, going through it, studying it, looking at it, even inquiring with neighbors and friends and others, what are your thoughts on this and those types of things, because that's what it's about. This is the first time, I think, at least that I can remember, and I've been involved in charter reviews dating back to the early 90s, that we actually selected, the way we did versus just everybody putting a person on there with no vetting process, trying to make sure that we had, the city from east to west and the central and everything represented. Newness, people brand new to the city and those types of things here as well, and making sure that we did that. So it was a little bit different process than what we've seen in the past. And I think it worked well with a good group of people, leading this effort. I'll open for questions and comments from City Council. Mr. Cousins.
And that right there is why, Mr. Slater, you did a fine job carrying the committee. I appreciate your time as well as everybody else. That was probably one of the most entertaining presentations I've seen, and I really appreciate each and every one of you's work towards this goal, so thank you very much.
Thank you, Mayor. I also wanted to express thanks. Thank you for your time, your commitment, and your leadership to our community. Greatly appreciated.
Mr. Carbone, did you reach for a second?
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments?
I see a pattern growing. Thank you for your time. Yes, we invest time here, but you all are members of the community, and y'all all have businesses, and y'all have jobs, and thank you for giving of your time to help do this and help lead our city. I love that we have this process in place where the community gets to have a voice into how our city runs. So I appreciate you all. Thank you very much.
Mr. Fernandez?
Just want to echo my colleagues. Everyone's busy. Life is busy, and for y'all to take the time, I just want to say thank y'all to each one of y'all. Thank you for choosing Craig as the one that was going to speak. That was very enjoyable. And so thank y'all for.
I think you got voluntold, but
That was serious. I mean, that's as serious as I can get. I was told not to auction off any city equipment and to stick to the point. Okay.
Thank y'all.
Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, we are going to do a roll call vote, but Madam Secretary is going to call for the vote.
Mayor Pro Tem Byram?
Aye.
Member Koza?
Aye.
Member Carbone?
Aye.
Member Chavadilla?
Aye.
Member Cade?
Aye.
Member Fernandez?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, thank you again for your service, folks. With that, we'll move to item number 4, but Ms. Cade, we need the full caption read. Darren, are you going to do that? All right, if you would. 1 second.
What I will do is I will go ahead and recommend a motion with the reading, and then if somebody would so move, and then somebody second. Okay? Yes, Mayor and Council Member, I'd recommend approval of resolution number 2025-101, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Pearland authorizing the power of eminent domain to acquire a fee title interest on certain property for improvements associated with the Makawa Road widening project, being a 0.2363 acres parcel of land situated in the HTMB RR Company Survey, Abstract 543, Brazoria County, Texas, being a portion of a calculated 1,003,976 acre lot, Lot 1 of Lot 6, Block 60 of Brookside Subdivision, a subdivision plat of record in Volume 2, page 112 of the Brazoria County Deed Records, filed on January 3rd, 1914. Same being out of a tract of land conveyed to Eloisa Garza, to Johnny Flores Garza by deed executed on October 12th, 2017, and recorded under Brazoria County Clerk's File Number 2017-050173 of the official records of Brazoria County, Texas, for construction and maintenance of road improvements on certain real property described herein.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Quick staff report.
Yes, Mayor and council members, this is the first of the properties that you will see, that you've seen come to you for the Makawa Road widening project that have gotten to this point. We've acquired many of the parcels needed for that roadway project already. There are some that you'll see more coming in the future. But this particular one is 0.2363 acres. As you can see from the summary I did, it's the appraisal for that property was $38,374. We have not received a counter offer to date, and so we're at a point where we're going to have to go ahead and move forward. If we're approached by a property owner with a counter offer, we can consider that and potentially avoid having to go to eminent domain, and we'll always keep that in consideration.
Could be like something else and just can't locate them. You never know.
Actually, there's been contact. They've just chosen not to. Yes. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
All right. Any other questions, comments from council? Seeing no one moving in that direction, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Cade?
Aye.
Member Fernandez?
Aye.
Member Patel?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Byram?
Aye.
Member Koza?
Aye.
Member Carbone?
Aye.
Member Chavarria?
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right. Thank you for that, Mr. Fernandez. If you'd place item 5, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Consideration and possible action, resolution number R2025-94. So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and dual seconds. Quick staff report.
Yes, Mayor and council members. I got to tell you, so I was away on vacation with my wife, and when I learned about that we were going to be doing this, and as a matter of fact, while I was on the trip, I got a email from Lawrence saying, hey, they discussed this night. Oh, I'm sorry, Lawrence from legal, saying that they discussed this at night. And he said, we're going to need to make an addition to the council rules. And he gave me some notes. I was like, so I'm going to have to really guess how to get the 7 people to come together on this issue, because based on what I was reading, I was like, that's going to be a challenge. So what you see is my attempt. I'm hopeful that this gets us there to accomplish the intent of what the council discussed that evening. So what I've done is, as you can see, there's some proposed language to add to the rules. And this would be creation of an advisory board recommendation committee. Something that's been done, I think, just as an understanding in the past. What this does is it actually memorializes it. And what I propose is having the committee consist of the mayor and the mayor pro tem, as it has in the past. In the past, there's always been just another person selected to go on there. What this does is allows the council to vote on who that what I would refer to as an at-large position that could serve in that position. And this would be done every single May at the same time we're doing selection of the mayor pro tem. So every year, this committee will change with whether there's a change in a mayor or a mayor pro tem or a new selection of an at-large member. And then I provided some guidelines for the board there, as you can see, that I created A, B, C, and D. I won't go through those because I know you've probably already read those, but happy to open it to the council for discussion if you have any questions or proposed changes.
I thought it hit the intent of what was voted on that night. I'll let council speak to that, but I thought it hit exactly what we talked about. So throw it open for questions, comments from council. Patel?
Thank you, Mayor. First of all, I want to thank Mona for this. Her idea on this, I think it's the intent, and I appreciate her. I appreciate the other council members considering this. So thank you guys for looking at this and hopefully making this change. Thank you.
Mr. Cousin?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, the only thing I think could make it better is at the end of advisory board recommendation committee, if we put dash Patel amendment, I think that'd be good.
Yeah, I think these types of things just take on their own life and new evolution, and I think the way it was done previously, probably a decade ago, 8-9 years ago, put together that way was the right thing from what it was, and now we've tried to improve it and make it a little bit better. I think it's just a good way to go about doing it. Last call for questions, comments. Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Fernandez,
Aye.
Member Patel,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Byram,
Aye.
Member Koza,
Aye.
Member Carbone,
Aye.
Member Chavadilla,
Aye.
Member Cade.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, and I've had a special request from Ms. Chavarria to place item 6 on the table. You'll do that?
Thank you. Consideration and possible action. City Council selection at large position for advisory boards and commissions recommendation committee. So move.
Second. Sorry.
And then, Mayor, I would like to nominate Councilmember Patel to serve at large on this advisory board committee.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, call for the vote.
Member Chavadilla,
Aye.
Member Cade,
Aye.
Member Fernandez,
Aye.
Member Patel,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Byram,
Aye.
Member Koza,
Aye.
Member Carbone.
Aye.
The motion passes 7-0.
All right, good deal, good deal. With that, we'll move forward in our agenda. Other business, there were no other issues listed here. Mayor, council issues for council discussion, there are none. We do have an executive session under Texas Government Code, Section 551.074, deliberations regarding the legal department's mid-year transitional reassignment of duties. So with that, we will move into executive session at 8:43. City Council has returned from executive session at 9:53. With that, we'll move forward in our agenda to adjournment at 9:53.